How's it going, everybody? I have a confession to make. I sorta have a guilty pleasure of watching cheesy video game movies. I grew up watching the bad adaptations, so I have sort of a nostalgia for these films. Stuff like the Resident Evil movies, Doom with Carl Urban and The Rock, the Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie. They were never good, but I just sort of grew used to the idea of any video game movie that came out naturally being bad. But things have started to change. It's crazy to think that for the longest time, the only video game movies we were getting were shallow adaptations that always seemed to have little to do with the source material, and they would often be received pretty poorly. But now we've been getting pretty solid stuff as of late. Detective Pikachu, the Sonic films, and now the Mario movie. And with the Mario movie being the highest grossing game adaptation of all time, other studios are probably taking notes. In the coming years, we're probably going to hear a bunch of announcements of different games getting their own movies, for better or worse. But the big takeaway for me personally is that we are absolutely getting more Nintendo movies. Mario sequels are 100% happening, but you also have people suggesting movies for other Nintendo series, such as Zelda and Metroid, and while I agree that those are probably some of the more likely contenders to get films, I want to see a series adapted that might be a little trickier to appeal to a more general audience. Kirby. Now, Kirby is no stranger to being adapted to animation, seeing as how he had his own anime series with Kirby Right Back At Ya, but a movie's gonna be different. You gotta try and make it appeal to both kids and adults, and essentially you have to condense what makes the series so special down to the runtime of a feature-length film. It seems like a daunting task, but I've made somewhat of a pitch for how I think a Kirby movie could be handled. Keep in mind, I'm going to be taking a lot of cues from Kirby Right Back At Ya, but I'm going to be trying to put my own spin on things. So let's just get into it, starting with the film's cast. First, we have the titular character himself, Kirby. Now, I think that Kirby's going to be the easiest character for them to handle. Just make him exactly how he's been in the games. Don't make him speak, keep him as bubbly and innocent as he always has been. That's really the only version of Kirby that works. Now, if Kirby doesn't speak, how exactly is he going to carry the movie? Well, I think the answer lies in the supporting characters. I think that Kirby is of course going to be the main hero, but I don't necessarily think that means that he has to be the main character. Look at how Kirby Right Back At Ya handled things. Kirby was the focus of the show, but you had characters like Tiff and Tuff to move the story along in each episode. So who will this supporting cast consist of? I don't think we'll get Tiff and Tuff, as I believe that Nintendo may want to keep the cast limited to what we already have in the games. Instead, I think that the two supporting protagonists in this film should be Bandana Waddle Dee and Adeline. Waddle Dee feels like the most obvious choice, seeing as how he has pretty much become Kirby's player too ever since Return to Dreamland. He's a super close friend of Kirby's, and we've even had dialogue from him on multiple occasions. Having him also presumably being a member of King Dedede's guard could also add some depth to him. Then we have Adeline, one of Kirby's many friends, specifically from Kirby 64. Despite her only appearing in a handful of titles, I've always seen her as one of Kirby's core friends. The other reason I think she would make sense is because she actually lives in Dreamland. Kirby's other friends from all of his different games always seem to be from other worlds or tied directly to plot lines, but Adeline is just another citizen of Planet Popstar. She also has the unique prospect of being a human, the only human in the Kirby series, which could very well give audiences a character that they can relate to easier. Now, Kirby wouldn't be the character he is without all of his friends, and I still have to get to two of the most important ones that I think will fill pretty interesting roles in the movie, King Dedede and Meta Knight. Now, I have to address something important with these two right off the bat. For much of Kirby's earlier history, these two were seen occupying more antagonistic roles. However, with them now being some of Kirby's closest friends, I can't see Nintendo really wanting to backpedal on that idea. With Dedede, I still think that he needs to be a bit of a bully, much like how he is in Kirby Right Back At Ya, but maybe toned down just a bit. I could see him being a lazy ruler over Dreamland who doesn't exactly approve of Kirby's arrival on Popstar, but I still think he needs to be brash and almost a bit stoic, but also have a soft side for his people that would surely be seen in a film. And then we have Meta Knight. I see Meta Knight sort of filling the role as sort of like a wise character who's going to be the catalyst for Kirby going on his journey throughout the film. Make him a mysterious protector of Popstar who seems to know way more than anyone else, once again taking after Kirby Right Back At Ya, and somewhat being an advisor to Kirby and company. So there we have it, our core cast. Pretty standard, don't want to go too crazy for an origin film, but I want there to still be a lot of room for interesting character growth, and that's going to coincide with what I think should be a fairly rich unfinished story. Narrowing in on a story for a Kirby movie is something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. The way that I approached it was by trying to come up with a story that would be a great entry point for people new to the franchise while also delivering much of the story beats that fans have come to love the series for. The story that I settled on is a bit of an amalgamation of these factors. The base that I'm using for this story is not really Dreamland or Adventure. While I do want to take story elements from these games, I'd rather go in a different direction. The basis that I'm going to use is actually the Dark Matter trilogy. This feels like such a great foundation if you were to make a Kirby movie because not only does it introduce you to the world of Kirby and a bunch of his friends, but it also introduces you to what is arguably the most iconic overarching antagonist of the entire Kirby series, Dark Matter. So now that we have our foundation, let's go through what I think the general structure of the movie should be. The first act of the film is largely going to be inspired by Kirby Right Back At Ya. Kirby is going to be in his spaceship when all of a sudden something sends him hurtling towards planet Popstar. The young Star Warrior will crash into the planet, much to the alarm of Adeline. She will then go to investigate the crash only to find Kirby unconscious. The young artist will take Kirby into her care to make sure he's okay. All the while, King Dedede has noticed the crash and goes off with Waddle Dee to investigate. They end up finding Adeline and asking her if she has seen anything. Dedede ends up seeing Kirby in her home, and he immediately tries to clobber that Kirby with his hammer due to Kirby being a potential threat. Adeline insists that Kirby means no harm, and Dedede allows Kirby to stay until he's healed up, but he leaves Waddle Dee with her to watch over Kirby to make sure nothing goes wrong. This would most likely lead into some wacky antics of Kirby venturing off into Cappy Town on his own, inhaling a bunch of the townspeople's food, causing a bunch of mischief, all the while Adeline and Waddle Dee are just trying to keep him out of trouble. But trouble wouldn't come until later. As it turns out, Kirby was being chased by something through space before he landed on Popstar. It ends up being none other than Dark Matter. A group of Dark Matter begins to descend onto the planet's surface to wreak havoc on Dreamland citizens while also seeking out Kirby. The citizens of Dreamland are being terrorized by the Dark Matter, and Dedede immediately puts the blame on Kirby. Dedede rushes over to Adeline's and demands that she hands over Kirby. During this, a wise warrior and a protector of Dreamland known as Meta Knight shows up and begins to interject. He speaks of a legend, saying that the creatures attacking Popstar are known as Dark Matter, an ancient evil that has spread nothing but despair throughout the galaxy. He believes that Kirby, however, comes from an ancient group known as the Star Warriors. He tells the group that Kirby may be the only being capable of warding off the Dark Matter. He says that Kirby will need to travel to the Fountain of Dreams to retrieve the Star Rod, a magical weapon that is said to be able to fight back against the darkest of evils. Adeline agrees to accompany Kirby on his journey, and Dedede sends Waddle Dee along with them while he and Meta Knight stay back to keep Dreamland safe from the Dark Matter invaders. And so the adventure begins. Kirby, Waddle Dee, and Adeline will travel across various different locales in Planet Popstar in order to reach the Fountain of Dreams. Along the way, they will encounter a few of Kirby's classic bosses that would be placed as obstacles by Dark Matter. For example, I imagine our heroes having to go through a deep wooded forest where we would encounter not only Kirby's animal friends from the Dreamland sequels, but also a corrupted Wispy Woods. This would mark the first time of Adeline and Waddle Dee seeing what Kirby is truly capable of. You would have the trio all fighting together against Wispy Woods, and you would see Kirby inhaling projectiles, spitting them back at Wispy, but we would still have yet to see the copy ability in action. After freeing Wispy Woods from Dark Matter's influence and restoring peace to the forest, our heroes would continue onward, going through a montage of different Kirby environments like deserts, grasslands, tropical areas, before coming to a mountainous area where the Fountain of Dreams would be at the top of one of the peaks. On the way up the mountain, however, they would encounter another boss, Kracko. This fight would be a much tougher battle for Kirby. Kracko would be shooting lightning at the ground, damaging the surrounding area, creating fires and explosions. Kirby would then inhale some of said fire, finally getting to see the copy ability in action. Kirby would begin shooting fire back at Kracko and make quick work of the boss after this point. Now our heroes would finally be able to reach the peak of the mountain to find the Fountain of Dreams. During this part of the story, we would also get characterization for both Waddle Dee and Adeline along the way. Waddle Dee would talk about wanting to prove himself to be a capable warrior, just like Meta Knight. He wants to protect Dreamland, but finds it difficult with Dedede being the way that he is, so he jumped at the chance to go on this quest to finally prove himself worthy of being a hero. As for Adeline, she'll open up about how, like Kirby, she doesn't actually come from Popstar originally. As it so happens, she has seen the Dark Matter before. It overtook her home planet, and her parents sent her to Popstar to ensure her safety. Adeline says that she lost one home. She can't afford to lose another. While all of this is going on, we would also get a side story of Dedede and Meta Knight back in Dreamland. The two are fighting side by side, sharing banter, showing that the two have history between each other. They end up facing off against a large horde of Dark Matter inside Castle castle Dedede. They end up getting overwhelmed, and we see the classic Dedede possession trope. Meta Knight reluctantly begins to defend himself against his friend in hopes that Kirby and his friends will make it back in time. Our heroes finally reach the Fountain of Dreams, and Kirby approaches it to grab the Star Rod. The Star Rod glows with immense radiant light, and Adeline and Waddle Dee look at it with awe. From the top of the mountains, however, Adeline notices that Dreamland is now consumed by a massive dark cloud. Waddle Dee states how they will never make it back in time. Upon hearing this, the Star Rod begins to glow, and it grants their wish. It summons a giant star, the Warp Star, that the trio is then able to ride back to Dreamland. The heroes arrive in Dreamland, and they see the source of the darkness emanating from the castle. Adeline and Waddle Dee tell Kirby to go to the castle. They will defend the townsfolk against the dark matter. We would then get a quick montage of Kirby dashing towards the castle, using his inhale and multiple copy abilities to fight through the dark matter minions. Kirby would then enter the castle to see Meta Knight fighting off against Dedede. Meta Knight would ask Kirby to help him get the dark matter out of the king. Kirby starts to use the Star Rod, but then gets it knocked out of his hand by Dedede. This would then play out like the classic fight between Kirby and Dedede from the original Kirby's Dream Land, until Meta Knight eventually manages to get the Star Rod and toss it back to Kirby. Kirby then uses the rod to expel the dark matter from the king, and the dark matter leaves Dedede's body, but it begins to take a different form, becoming the dark matter swordsman from Dreamland 2. Swordsman would then have his stereotypical evil monologue about how some small pink thing managed to fight back the dark matter. At that moment, Adeline and Waddle Dee would rush into the castle to see what was going on. This would then result in a fight with all of our heroes fighting off against the Dark Matter Swordsman. It would be a really fun action sequence seeing all of the characters getting to shine. It would end with the swordsman firing a giant beam at Kirby, but Kirby would use the Star Rod, along with all of his friends helping, to fire a giant star right back at him. Now defeated, the swordsman would say how this isn't over, and how there are evils far greater than himself. This could hint at Zero, as well as other major antagonists throughout the Kirby series as well. After retreating with the rest of the dark matter, the skies would clear, and the residents of Cappy Town would cheer on Kirby and his friends. Dedede will begrudgingly admit that he misjudged Kirby, and that Kirby is welcome to stay in Dreamland. After a big victory celebration, the final shot would be Kirby entering his classic dome-shaped house from the game, and then the credits roll. But wait, this movie has a post-credit scene. So, in terms of post-credit scenes, they could absolutely do a bigger tease for Zero, but I think a more fun possibility would be showing some of the wreckage from the battle in Cappy Town, and it would zoom in on a blob of dark matter that was left behind. The blob would then turn to face the camera slowly, and you would see a happy face on it, teasing Gooey for a possible sequel. So, there you have it, my pitch for a Kirby movie. I might have gone a little bit overboard with my ideas, but I had fun thinking of what could be possible with a film like this, and I would love to hear your own ideas from you guys in the comments, and possibly what other games you would want to see become movies. But for now, I think that's enough out of me. So if you guys like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Later.